Hey guys, Exploring with Chelsea here. I am at Four Peaks Brewery, which is my favorite local big name brewery. They're right there behind me, and I am about ready to do a haunted tour with them. And I've been wanting to do this for like 8 years, if not longer, since they started doing this. And it's taken me that long to be able to do that. So, gonna go on the tour. This is one of the oldest buildings in Tempe. It's at it's College Town, ASU West, or ASU main campus. I apologize. I am looking forward to doing this tour. Like I said, I have been dying to do this tour for 10 years almost, and I am really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great night, and I'm so excited because, as I said, this has been on my bucket list for a long time. They were shut down Monday only because of the fact that we got crazy rain and they had power outages, but I guess they opened up later on in the evening to be able to do the tours. But I hope you guys stick around so that we can enjoy this tour together, and stick around, find out for more tour or more information, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks guys, love ya. We are at Four Peaks Brewing for their haunted tour. So excited. We are in Tempe. Their building starts there and ends right there. So stick around guys.
So this land has actually been inhabited since about 860 AD by indigenous people. Historians believe that they lived, worked, and even died here on this land that we stand on. That tribe actually still resides on the Arizona-Mexican border, so they are still around. And if any of you are natives to the Tempe area, you might have known Devil's Advocate down the street. Yeah? Okay. They're still currently working on constructing that area and digging up the ground. It's been taking so long actually because they've been finding artifacts from that tribe. It's true, you can look this up on the news, it's actually pretty neat. That being said, just east of the bar where I picked you all up at, when we constructed that area of the bar as an addition to this building, historians actually found a large pot, which they called an ala, and inside were the remains of at least one human body. So it's very possible that this building itself was built upon a cemetery of some sort. I know a lot of the construction of the neighborhood to the south of us here was also taking a while because they were finding bodies and artifacts as well along the way. So it's very possible that that's what's leading to some of the paranormal events happening here. The building itself was actually built in 1892, so it's a very old building. A lot of the ground that you stand on is from them. These brick walls were built back then. It was built to be an ice house back in the day, so it produced everything from ice chips to ice cream to butter, cream cheese, and they shipped it all over Arizona New Mexico and Old Mexico at the time. In 1907, Pacific Creamery, it was a California-based creamery, bought the building out. They were known for being one of the largest employers in the city of Tempe. They employed a little over 50 people at the time. So this building was a huge center for the community of Tempe. A lot of people came here to meet up with their old coworkers, to talk to friends and family, to pick up their milk. And it was just a huge center for Tempe at the time. Pacific Creamery prided itself in being one of the largest creameries on the West Coast, and they were looking to expand westward when they bought this place out. And in 1927, what we're most known for, people most know us for previously, was Borden Co. Creamery bought us out. Borden Co. Creamery was known for modernizing a lot of the equipment for the creamery inside, as well as creating the Spanish facade that you still see on the outside of the building today. Borden Co. operated for about 26 years until they were bought out by Arden Farms. And Arden Farms basically shut down everything creamery, and after that, tenants of all sorts moved in and out of the building. A lot of them moved out so fast that they would even leave some of their products or equipment behind. Obviously, no one really knows why they left so quickly, but after we bought the building and had some of our own experiences, we can only guess why. They might have been scared out of here. Four Peaks founders did buy the building in 1995, and we opened our doors to the public in 1996. And like I said, I'm going to tell you stories from all of those years of our founders, our bussers, employees, even customers sometimes that have experiences with some of our friendly and not so friendly spirits around here. So that being said, I'm going to take you not too far right over here. Whenever I stop, just feel free to create a little like half-dome circle around me so that everybody can kind of hear me. Yeah, all set. Alrighty, well I'm going to tell you a quick story about one of our brewers over here. And just some stories about our brewers in general, because this is where they most often work. A lot of times our brewers will report working here in the early mornings, and they'll leave their paperwork and some of their equipment. And when they come back from lunch, or sometimes even come back the next day, they report that their paperwork and stuff has been scattered about. Sometimes things are missing. And some of them obviously just believe that there are other brewers playing tricks on them. But some of them who have had other paranormal experiences believe that something spooky is happening. Another common thing that they all report here is hearing the sound of a hammer banging a nail into the walls all around the building. Now, similar to that sound right there, actually. I've even heard a sound just like that. They actually have me on camera here screaming and running around the corner because I was cleaning up after these tours last year, and something slammed down so loud next to me that it sounded like a keg had fallen from the roof. That's how loud it was. And upon further inspection, nothing had fallen around me. So I've even heard this sound before. It's very similar to that, except maybe sometimes a little louder. Now, like I said, some of the brewers, specifically one of our original brewers, thinks that it's a bit of hoopla, all this ghost paranormal stuff. And he was very determined to figure out where the sound was coming from. And since they were majorly hearing it in this area, he had assumed that it had something to do with maybe the brewing process. So I'm going to walk you through it real fast and see if we can solve the ghost of Four Peaks together as we brew a batch of beer. So he started over in that mill room where that red light is over there. Inside of there, we break open grains to get better access to the enzymes and sugars for brewing. And when you turn that on, it sounded nothing different than that of maybe when the machinery clicks on. Again, nothing similar to the sound of a hammer and a nail. So he moved on to this G hopper. It's this large metal funnel right up at the top. When you turn that on, all that grain kind of filtered down through it. And it sounded something like a rain stick when you flip it. Again, nothing similar to that sound. So he moved on to our combo mash ton loader. It's this machine right here. Inside of here, all of that grain is mixed with water to create a sort of mush. So when you turn that on, you just heard the swishing sound. But then, when he got to the boil kettle right behind that smaller thing next to it, he noticed that as the water started to boil, making the wort inside, which is just hot sugar water, he noticed that every about 10 to 15 minutes, the lid would pop off and create a really loud banging sound. And he thought, well, that's it, I've solved the ghost of Four Peaks. It's just been this not so tightly screwed on lid this whole time. So he tightened that lid down, and he was so excited to come in the next day and rub in all the brewers' faces that he had solved the ghost of Four Peaks that everybody was so spooked by. And as he began to walk away, he heard the sound come from way over there. Now, still determined that it had something to do with maybe these fermentation tanks or something in the brewing process, he continued along his journey. He checked the whirlpool, which was a giant filtration device. He even checked our hop back, which infuses beers with aromas and smells. And nothing made that sound again. So finally, he put the beer in one of those fermentation tanks back there, hoping that maybe something would replicate that sound. And he waited for a good 15, 20 minutes. No sound. And finally he thought again, maybe he had solved it, maybe it was just the boil kettle and it rattled loose one more time. And as he walked away, he heard the sound from way over there on top of the roof, he said. Now there's no access to that part of the building, at least for the living. And that brewer, we've talked with him before, he still kind of believes that it's a little bit of hoopla, but to the other brewers he thinks that it's definitely something paranormal. Again, I've heard that sound before, and I don't think it was anyone playing a trick on me. So if you hear something similar to that as we're along in our journey, just know it's probably one of our ghost friends playing a little trick on you. Another friend that we've had wandering around, well, I don't know if she's friendly or not, but we've had some recordings from the brewers and some of the bussers when they go back there to get ice, that there's been a little ghost girl wandering around the premise. Now, we don't really know her story. I don't know who she is or what she wants. The only thing I've heard is that she doesn't really like people to look at her for very long. So if you do happen to see someone or something wandering around in the shadows as we continue, I suggest you don't stare at her for very long. We're not going to go too far. We're just going to stop right here. Well, then it said maybe. Alrighty, I'm going to tell you the story of one of our most famous railroad train crashes. So again, if any of you live here or you know this area, if you go west down 8th Street and you look to the right, you'll still be able to see some of the old train tracks that ran through this area. So right behind in this terrible parking lot, or terrible alleyway that we call a parking lot, is where a large train track used to run through, and right behind this rolling metal door is actually where a railroad crossing used to be. And it was known to be one of the most deadly railroad crossings in the city of Tempe. Again, this is all a true story where there's pictures in here. There's an article from the newspaper about some of the crashes that used to happen here. But the one I'm specifically going to tell you about happened in May of 1898. There was a horse-drawn carriage full of 3 men, and they were attempting to cross this railroad crossing when their carriage became stuck on the tracks. Now, no one knows what caused this misfortune. Maybe negligence on one of the men, maybe the horse got spooked, or maybe something truly paranormal happened that morning. However, unluckily enough, the train that was supposed to be coming 10 minutes later came 10 minutes early. The men were unable to get out of the wagon in time. Actually, the first man was the luckiest. He got out of the wagon with just a couple cuts and bruises as they frantically tried to escape. The second man, James Toney, was not very lucky though. When the police got here to look at his body, he was flung about 20 feet from the wagon. His head bashed in against a rock, and they deemed that he likely died upon impact. And the third man got it the least lucky of all. George Dean was found directly underneath the train on the tracks, nearly split in half. Now again, this is a true story, and some of the brewers say that when they get here really early to work in this office right behind you all, some of them say that they can still hear the train rumbling by and the whistle as it starts to pass. And some of them say on really quiet mornings that they can still hear the sound of 3 men being flung from a train. All right, you guys can follow me. That makes me feel better. I promise not to scream again. Something just really possessed me to do that. I apologize. Alrighty. I'm going to tell you the story of one of our more friendly ghosts that we have that likes to wander the building. His name is Victor. Again, this is a true story. It's a real picture of him. I'm going to tell you a little backstory here. So this cooler over here is our Grundy. That cooler holds a bunch of kegs in which we tap, and the lines run underground to the main bar. It's pretty typical in the state of Arizona or a lot of hotter states for beer to be transported that way, just because it keeps the beer a little colder underground like that, and it keeps pests out as well. Well, back in 1995, after the installation when we bought the building of those underground lines, our founder Andy was here kind of late one night. He said it was about 5 or 6 p.m. and he was sweeping up some of the dust and the debris that was left over from that. And as he was doing that, he heard someone come in through the back, and when he turned around, there was an old man walking his way. Well, you might think that's a little creepy, but Andy wasn't too thrown off by that, because like I said, this had been a big building for the city, so a lot of people who had previously worked here or had grandparents working here were really excited to see something being done with this building. So a lot of times they said after they bought the building, people were kind of wandering in and out to ask what was being done with it. So when Andy saw the old man, he struck up a little conversation with him, and the old man told him that he used to be the creamery manager here back in the 30s and 40s, and he was really excited to see that the building was being used again. Well, Andy thought that was super awesome since they had just bought the place, and he wanted to tell him what he was doing with Four Peaks. And as he was explaining that, the old man just kind of stopped and silently stared at the Grundy that they had just put into the building. And all of a sudden, the old man just pointed to it, looked at Andy, and said that I almost died there. Well, Andy was a little weirded out by that. He asked him to tell him the story. The old man said that back when this was a creamery, there used to be a large vat that sat on the floor. And he said inside that vat were these sweeping metal blades. And Victor told Andy that one morning he came in as the manager, and he came to look to see if everything was working well. He would come in to make sure everything was clean and checked up on before all the employees got here. And so he went inside of the vat to check to make sure everything was good, when all of a sudden, he said the blades started to move. Victor told Andy that he was unable to leave the vat in time, and he was forced to lay on the ground as the blades whipped above his face, screaming for help. Victor told Andy that he laid there for about an hour until the employees came in, or at least what felt like an hour, and they had to shut off the machine. Now keep in mind that this was in the 30s and 40s, so this wasn't like an electronic computer glitch or something like that. That means someone or something had to manually flip the switch on, trying to hurt Victor. Well, as anybody would be, they were disturbed by that story, and he looked at the Grundy, and when he turned to look around, Victor was all gone. Andy said that he searched the premises of the building. He even went outside and looked down the street. He couldn't find the old man anywhere. Now, being the smart man, businessman that Andy was, he decided he wasn't going to tell anyone that he was either hallucinating conversations with an old man or that the brewery he had just bought was haunted, so he kept the story to himself. Until one day, after we bought the building, we started getting a lot of newspaper articles from the Tempe Historical Museum telling us the facts and fun things about this building. And our other founder, Jim, was upstairs reading one of those articles. Andy came in and popped over his shoulder and looked and saw a picture of Victor. And without really thinking, he said to Jim, "Hey, I just talked to that guy a couple weeks ago." Well, Jim looked at Andy and he said, "That's not possible." Andy said, "Why?" Jim says, "Well, it says right here that he was the manager here in the 30s and 40s, and he lived a long and happy life until he died in 1972. And Andy swears that he spoke with Victor in this spot in 1995. That's our founder again. It's a true story from him. That being said, we were able to reach out to Victor's families after we started these tours. Some cool information about that. We've had people on one of these tours say that they've seen a white floating polo shirt behind those flaps over there. We've had people say that they've seen an elderly man walking in a white polo shirt in the tanks, customers sitting eating their dinner before. When we reached out their family, Victor's family actually provided us with some old photos of him. They said that he typically enjoyed wearing a pretty basic uniform of a white polo shirt and some slacks into work. So if you happen to see a ghostly figure with a white polo shirt around here. It might be Victor. He's one of our more friendly spirits, I like to say. I think he just comes around to make sure that his old stomping grounds are still being taken care of. So, that being said, we do have some unfriendly ghosts here. And our two founders, Andy and Jim, I met them before. They're pretty goofy guys. They actually came in a couple years after buying the building and some spooky things happened. There's a picture in here somewhere, I think, of them actually performing a little seance to try and rid the evil ghosts here of Fort Peaks. It's been a fun thing to do ghost hunts and stuff with the employees here after hours and stuff, so it's kind of just an honor after that to do that. But I'll let you decide if we were able to get rid of the evil ghosts that still wander around here as we go along in the tour. You into our old barrel room, it's through these flaps right here. As you go down, please be careful because there is a step. And also, please do not lean against any of the barrels. They might actually tip over. Box because the machines start getting quiet out here. Can everyone still hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Alrighty. It likes to talk a lot in here, so if it says anything ghoulish, let me know.
In the last room, it said, the talk said, pound tree, 39 years, killed daddy.
Okay.
But then you were talking about the automatic, or it wasn't an automatic
And it said
machine, it's a
manual.
It said manual? Oh, that's crazy. That's really cool. Yeah.
It did say 40 years, which makes sense that the person passed away in 70s and he started around the 30s, so that's 40 years right there.
That is. Yeah, that's really cool too.
That's cool.
It usually says a lot of years in here, I've noticed, and it also talks about like places in here a lot. This is the common room where we've spotted the little girl. I think she likes to play hide and seeks in some of the corners around the barrels. So if you see anything or hear anything, a lot of people like to see shadows in this room, stuff like that. I do have a little music box REM pod set up over there, so if something happens to wander by it and it starts playing music, I'm running out that door, so nobody get in my way, but because that music box is very creepy. And then let me tell you a quick little thing about this room. This is our old barrel room, so a lot of these barrels used to be full of whiskey, rye, bourbon. Once they're emptied, we put our beer in it, and they actually sit in these barrels and age for about 2 to 3 years until we serve them to you guys. So, but I didn't come in here to tell you about barrels. I came in here to tell you about the Gray Man. So, back when we first opened, this room was just used as a liquor storage room for quite a while. So there used to be these cabinets on the ground with all these liquor bottles. And one of our original-ish bartenders, her name was Stephanie. I believe this was about 5-6 years after we opened. She hated paranormal things. She hated ghosts. She didn't like to deal with any of that. She tried with all her might to stop coming into this room. But at the end of their shifts, they were required to restock the bar. So Stephanie told us that one night she came into this room, she walked through those flaps, and she felt really cold. And you guys might have felt a cold shift when you walked in. Did you guys? It's a little colder in here. It's because this room used to be a cold storage room for the creamery, so it's extremely well insulated actually. So any cold air that does get in here stays in here. Even in the summers, it's about 10 degrees colder. Stephanie knew that, but when she walked in that door, she said it was so chilly that she even got goosebumps on her arms. She said she was already a little freaked out from that, but she just ignored it because she had to come in here and get her liquor bottles. And she was standing here, pulling out these bottles, finding what she needed, and she just really couldn't shake the sense that something was in the room with her. Something was watching her. So she stood here, and she was getting everything as quick as she could. And she said from the corner of her eye, she sensed like a shadow moving or something over here. But at this point, she was thoroughly freaked out. So she grabbed her bottles and she began walking. And when she got about halfway over there, she just really couldn't shake the sense that something was watching her. So she turned around to look, and she said standing right here on this wall was an 8-foot tall gray man. And she said when she turned to look at it, his face, which was way up there, turned to look right back at her. Stephanie said she ran out those doors, ran to the main bar. She said she must have looked extremely pale or frightened because ironically one of the customers at the bar, she told us, literally said, "You look like you've just seen a ghost." Stephanie was obviously not very amused at the moment. But we did reach out to her. We still have her contact info. We talked to Stephanie, and she gave us a little more description about him. She said what it had looked like was a man or a person had been strung through almost a Laffy Taffy machine. She said that his arms were extremely long and his legs were very lanky. And she said that he didn't have any specific facial features, that she could see the indent of his eyes and his nose. And she said she was so terrified by the time she turned to look around, and once that thing turned to look right back at her, she sprinted out the door screaming. Now, we've had mediums come and investigate. We've had ghost hunters here before. Mediums have said that they believe that that was our resident evil spirit, Anthony. He is not very friendly, unlike Victor. He likes to spook you. He likes to make it known that you're in his space and he doesn't want you there. And so that being said, we're gonna try and get into his space. Let's see if we can prompt him to come out there. So maybe we can get it to talk over here. You guys can follow me. We're gonna be in this room right here. Tours in Louisiana, and they said one of the most common ones when people who are super sensitive to it is a headache or a migraine.
Yeah.
When they're around something.
That's what I was feeling.
You felt that in there? Yeah, that room when I first started 3 years ago used to creep me out the most. Now it's not room back there, but we'll get in there. This room over there creeps me out. This one just gives me vibes, bad vibes, but I've never had anything super spooky happen in there. It's only been in that room, and this is where I heard the pig like fall, and there was nothing around it. It sounded like it was raining super street. I'll tell you a quick story in here. These 2 tanks behind you each hold about 3,000 gallons of reverse osmosis water. So we take Tempe's tap water and filter it down to pure H2O. If you've ever had a glass of our water here and you're like, that's really good, that would be why. We also make our beer with it, which is why we have the best beer in Tempe. And in the state of Arizona even. And we make our food with that water as well. Now the story I have in here for you is the spookiest of them all. So back in 1907, like I said, this place kind of moved in and out of tenants, and for a while it was actually a voting poll, which is kind of cool. But there is history here that 143 people actually stood in this room and voted to enact their own prohibition in the city of Tempe before the federal government even did so. Ooh, no alcohol, super scary. They voted twice to do that, once in 1907 and once again in 1911. And it actually wasn't revoked until 1933 when the federal government revoked the prohibition. So we just find it a fun, ironic story that the place where we once voted to get rid of a bunch of alcohol is now the place where we serve a profuse amount of liquor and beer. So kind of funny. If you do watch The Ghost Adventures, or if you have seen it, Zach, I believe is his name, was the cameraman. He was standing right about here. There was no one around him, and he was scratched by something or someone. This is also the place where they were able to get footsteps recorded on camera while no one was moving and like something running up on them. Again, if I had to guess who that was, it's our resident evil spirit, Anthony, who lives in this room. He likes to run up on people, he likes to spook you, and he hates when people come in his room. So we're going to go on in You guys can scooch in a little if you guys want, just to feel free to cozy up over here. You guys, there we go. Can everybody hear me back there? You guys okay? Alrighty, this is our 120 room. Definitely what people say is the most haunted room here at Peaks. We call this the 120 room because it used to hold 120 barrels that we actually sold to Santana Brewery. They're obviously gone now. We just use this for, I believe, some actor that I was telling you about, Jim, and a medium. So back when we bought this, about 5-6 years afterwards, Jim would come and he would kind of walk around the building and visit some of the customers and stuff and talk to them, get to know who was coming into his new bar. And one day he saw this lady that was sitting at the bar alone, and he went up to chat with her. And he got to talking and found out that she was actually a medium. So she helped people communicate with their loved ones who had passed away, talk to the dead. And without really telling her anything about what was happening in the building, he asked her if maybe she wanted to just do a tour, see if she would see anything without her knowing about all the spooky stuff that had been happening. Of course, this lady was super excited to go do that because she had been a resident here her whole life, and like I said, a lot of these people were super excited to see this building being put to use. So she agreed, and she walked around the whole building with Jim, same tour we basically just did, until she got to that doorway right there. And she stopped and she looked at Jim, and she said, "There's no way I'm coming inside of that room." And Jim said, "Why not?" And she said, "Because it's way too much paranormal activity happening in there, it's spooky." And he said, "Well, tell me something that's going on. Is there someone in here?" And she said, "There sure is. There's a man standing over in the corner there. His name is Victor, and he's telling me that he used to be the greenery manager, or he used to work here." Well, Jim was like, "There's no way she knows that. That's crazy." But maybe she had known some of the history of the building or something like that. So he wanted to push the envelope a little and see if she could answer some other questions. He decided to ask her if everything haunting the building was human. Well, she thought about that for a minute, and then she replied, "No." That's our resident evil spirit answer. Going back into this closet. Everything haunting the building was not human, though. There is actually a little black cat. I have quite a few stories about him. So back when there was the basis for the creamery here, there used to just be these large metal pipes, and we actually found an article, again in the Tempe Historical Museum's articles that they would send to us, that there was a cat that they like to call the creamery cat, and he unfortunately passed away one night after a monsoon. They had rattled some of the metal pipes up there down, and it accidentally killed a cat that was here. It was the creamery kitty, yes. So they wrote a little memorial for him because he was pretty popular within the neighborhood, and we still see him to this day. So I think it was a year or two ago, I was in here with my manager Carter, who sets up all these things and loves ghost spooky stuff, and we went to turn out the lights in here, and we both heard him meow. I turned back on the lights and we surveyed this whole room. There was no cat to be seen. We've heard multiple servers say that they've seen cat eyes in places where cats shouldn't be. One of our other servers, Carly, has said that she's seen a ketchup bottle fly off a shelf, and if you know cats at all, I'm sure you've seen something went off there. Actually, this was 2 tours ago, last week. There was a lady wearing shorts, and she told me after the tour that before I even told the cat story, she said she swear to God she felt something rubbing up against her leg. And then I told the cat story, and she was like, "There's no way." So there's definitely a cat. I think he's in this room. He's obviously the more friendly critter that haunts this room. The closet behind that exit sign right there is where we believe Anthony lives. He's our resident evil spirit. I have propped up that door with a full keg and watched it close with my own eyes. I don't know if you've ever tried to lift a full keg, it's quite heavy. It would not move with just that much door pushing it closed. Our manager Carter has been in there testing his luck with one of those voice boxes that you guys have, and he said, "Is there something in here? If so, say my name." It literally replied Carter, and then it said "die," and then it told him Carter leave. So Carter promptly got out of that room. Like I said, he likes to run up on people. He likes to be extremely aggressive. So, I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to get out of this room. And if you hear anything around that line, I suggest you go past it. But it is by far my least favorite, just because I've had the most things happen to me in here. This room is called Twombly. so much bottling and stuff that we have a whole center for it. But we still do small batch brewery bottling in here as well. This room is called Twombly after a photographer that used to come in here when we were between tenants by the name of Twombly. And obviously it's a little spooky at night, at least I think so. But in the morning when the sun comes through these windows, it's quite beautiful. So he loved to take pictures with this natural brick wall behind it. And yeah, I've had some crazy things happen to me here. I was on my first tour 3 years ago now. And I was standing probably this far away from you guys, from a group, telling my story. And I kid you not, something whispered directly in my ear. It was the craziest thing ever. I didn't really believe in ghosts or paranormal things until that happened, and it scared the living bejesus out of me. And if something whispers in my ear again, I'm out. The tour group that I was with really didn't believe me that it was happening. They thought I was just playing with them, but it was so serious, it was crazy. I've also been in here with Carter, that manager again. Sometimes he'll take people who want to go, employees and stuff, on these little ghost tours at night. And one time him and I and the twins were in here, Carter and Taylor, if you come here often, and I was walking around with that voice box. I went over into this corner over there where it's just where I have a REM pod right now too, if that goes off. I went over into that corner and I got like static electricity on my arms. It was the most bizarre feeling ever. The hair on my arms like stood up. And then at the same time that happened, the voice box lit up and started talking. And I was like, that's crazy. I went over and handed it to Carter, and it kept telling us like, leave, get out, go. And Carter was like, all right, well, if you want us to leave the building, then I need you to knock on something in the room. And I kid you not, 3 times on that wall over there, all 4 of us that were standing in the room heard something knock. So after that, I promptly left the room because I was not going to stick around to find out what would happen if I didn't. But yeah, this room is where I've had definitely the most paranormal activity happen. I also have a story from, I believe, about 8 years ago. It was a manager and a bartender that were here late one night. And they were usually, the bartenders stick around to count the drawer, make sure all the money is right. And they were upstairs in the manager's office counting the drawer when all of a sudden somebody started to knock on the door. And the manager was like, hey, come on in, we're up here. And nobody answered the door. And it just started to get louder and a little more aggressive. And they were like, hey, we're up here, come on in. And then suddenly the door handle started rattling and the knocking got louder. What did it say? It said what?
Rasp.
Rasp. Interesting. See, if it's a raspy voice that whispers in my ear, I'm out, I swear to God. So they were up there counting, and the knocking started to get louder, and nobody was entering the door. So finally they were like, well, somebody's got to be playing a prank on us, just trying to scare us. Let's just check the cameras. So they said that they checked the camera that was facing the manager's door, and when they looked at it, they could visibly see the door handle shaking, but no one was out there shaking it. Well, they sat there while the knocking continued and watching the camera for a couple minutes until finally it stopped. Both of them were so terrified that they stayed in the room, and our bartender said, hey, we should just like survey the rest of the cameras, make sure that nothing like weird is happening. Like, I don't know if I want to leave the room yet. The manager said, yeah, definitely. So he pulled up all the cameras, and they looked around in each room that we just went on, and they didn't see anything until they got to the camera that was in here. And it's up in that corner, it's facing this wall. And they said what they described they saw was something hunched over, kind of creepily twitching, walking as it crawled up and down the wall in the back over here. And they said that they watched that figure walk back and forth for about 5 minutes until it disappeared and they saw nothing again. Now, they were extremely terrified at this point. They said that they actually propped a chair underneath the door and they spent the night overnight in that room. They refused to leave until the morning. Now, they don't work here anymore, not because of ghosts, but they just got better jobs. But, but when they did work here after that incident, they told us that they talked with management and both of them refused to work a night shift, and both of them also refused to come into this room ever again. So, yeah. Oh my god, that scared me. That spooked me. Okay, I have one more story. I'm not going to stand over here because now I'm spooked. This is our old barrel room, and no, sorry, that's our old barrel room. Sorry, that got me all jacked up. This is our new barrel room right here. The new barrel room, we're not allowed to go in, unfortunately, but I do have a quick story about it. So our head brewer, Melissa, she actually still works here. She was in the office late one night that's in the back corner here, and I don't know, I don't think it was that late, but she was here with other people here. She was just sitting there working one night. She's our head brewer, so she tends to stay around after all the other brewers came home. It was probably like 6 or 7. And she said that she was in there working in the office and she started to hear things. Now, Melissa's a pretty tough cookie. She's not too spooked by any of this stuff. So she said she was pretty stubborn when she started hearing things. She just assumed it was the machinery or equipment. Until she sat there for a little longer working, and she started to hear footsteps now, walking up and down the hall. And when she turned to look behind her, she said she saw a shadow. And Melissa was like, all right, well, I'm tough, but I'm not that tough. So she grabbed her stuff and she packed it up and she started to leave. And she said that lining this hallway, there were these hard hats and orange vests that the brewers would wear, similar to that of like a construction worker when they're moving heavy equipment and stuff. And as she walked down this hallway, she said one of the hard hats actually flew off the wall, smacked into the other side, and landed on the ground in front of her. At this point, Melissa said she ran down the hallway, came out here, slammed this thing closed, and put a padlock on the door. Now, the brewers like to tell us that we're not allowed in here because of all the secret brewing they're doing, but some of us like to believe there's something spooky happening in this room. They were nice enough to leave us a little window to look inside, though. That's incredibly hard to open now. If anybody wants to look inside, you can see what's going on in there.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, that's awesome.
We can get it to say anything.
Totally untidy.
Sometimes they just don't like the lights, so I'm going to turn them off and see if we can get them to talk.
Oops, sorry.
All right, who's got the box? What's on the box? Okay. Let's see if we can get it to say anything in here. Sometimes I like to go around. Does anybody have any questions or anything? Anybody want to ask it something? Maybe is there anyone in the room here with us right now?
Cupcake, all right.
Maybe it is the little girl here. Is there a little girl with us right now? Do you like cupcakes?
Cuba Bites. Timid.
She's timid.
Temperature.
The temperature of this room is colder.
It did cool down, yeah.
Became. Oh, there's two little girls. Or three? Very interesting. We got her talking. someone buried here that's talking to us. Buried. Grandpa. Grandpa. Your grandpa buried here? Doing a lot of 20s, 22, 20. Was that the only place that you got that?
Yeah, it was literally right in this corner right here, and it hasn't been back since.
Tore, I think, last year, and this thing was silent literally the entire time until this guy kept putting it near this one barrel that was just like sitting on the floor. And every time he would put it on the barrel, it would talk. It was the craziest thing ever. So then we had a theory that it goes to the side of you. A lot of water all of a sudden. Should we get out?
Alright guys, this is where the old train used to run. This is the area that they were talking about, and yes, you see the airplane because we are right by the airport. This alleyway is the alleyway that the tour guide was talking about. Not so friendly because it's got a lot of potholes, but this is where the train used to run that took the lives of some innocent people, and here's where we were standing when she was telling us about that. But like I said, this is one of my favorite breweries. We're located in Tempe, and I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. Very historical. I had a lot of fun. I don't spook easily, and I was expecting some of that stuff to happen, but it was still fun to have that stuff, like the screams and everything, happen. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said, don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video. Enjoy, guys. All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a lot of fun. Got my crowler. The tour was a hoot, and had a lot of fun. It was very informational, gave me a lot of information that I didn't even know about. I knew it was a creamery at one time, and but the history that it goes back was information I didn't even know about. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thanks, guys.